Welcome to Unstoppable Stories That Move. I'm your host, Sally Head Dahlquist. I've traveled all over the world to run marathons and am fascinated by the ordinary people who do extraordinary things. They just won't quit. No matter what life throws at them, they keep going. Mile after mile, challenge after challenge, they find a way to push beyond their limits. So listen as these seemingly normal people share their stories of resilience from the race course and beyond, and inspire us to keep moving forward too. Let's get to it. Hi, everyone. I'm Sally Dahlquist, and we are here today with Joel Karsten of the Straw Bale Movement at his house in Roseville, Minnesota. And today we're doing a little bit of a pivot from a athletic activity, and we're going to talk about gardening. So Joel is just absolutely unstoppable, passionate, because he started a movement in home gardening, which has turned into food production all over the world. And when I first started my podcast, my vision was ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And Joel certainly fits that profile. So I'm really glad that he agreed to be on my podcast. I first heard about him in 2013 when my mom set up a straw bale garden in her house in Buffalo, Minnesota. And she helped me set it up at my other house, and now she's passed away. But it's nice to kind of continue her legacy with that. So say hi, Joel.
I'm honored to be with you. That's quite an introduction. I appreciate it very much. It has been a movement which really started almost 30 years ago now, a little over 30 years ago.
So can you tell us, before we get started, with a little bit about your background, give us a quick overview of what straw bale garden is. And I know the reason my mom found out about this in 2013 is because you published a book. Just tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about how you got into this.
Yeah, the first book, Straw Bale Gardens, came out in 2013 in March. I was already 16, 17 years into straw bale gardening before this book ever came out. Now, this is the first. Now I have 5 books that have been published, all by the same publisher, Cool Spring Press.
Oh, and your picture's on the back.
Yeah, I always tell people it's my younger brother. So long ago. But yeah, that's how the book came about. Was kind of a weird story, long story, but eventually the publisher found me and said, "Hey, you got to write a book about this method."
Yeah.
So yeah, straw bale gardening method. You wanted me to talk a little bit about what it
so
is.
the method is using bales to plant your crops in instead of planting them in the ground. And then all the food is growing, all the plants are growing down into the bales. So there's roots.
Essentially, it becomes, the inside of the bale becomes soil. We just accelerate that process a little bit by a process we call conditioning the bale. It's really sort of a method of composting. Static compost is really what it is. But if you add a little bit of nitrogen and moisture to any organic material, very quickly the bacteria will accelerate their action inside the bale, and they break down the organic matter and it becomes soil. All soil on Earth is decomposed organic matter. Something that was once alive has died, decomposed by the final decomposer is always bacteria. And that becomes soil, and that releases nutrient molecules, which can then be absorbed by another plant. So it's sort of Mother Nature's recycling engine is bacteria.
Is bacteria and worms. And
worms and insects and mold and, all those things work together to decompose living things. Anything that was ever alive, even you and I, believe it or not, will someday become soil.
That's what your gut is doing on the inside.
That's right.
It's helping
it decomposes everything. And it's magical, but it's so small. Bacteria are so small, you can't see them unless you have a microscope. So to a lot of people, they don't even realize how important bacteria are.
Which I do have a microscope at home because I'm a biochemist and worked in the labs.
Most of the time to see bacillus bacteria you got to have about a 400 power scope to be able to even see them. So most of the time people live their whole life and never seen a bacteria or don't realize what they do, but they're essential to everything, to everything you eat, to everything that has to do with life.
So the bigger picture too is that people are really concerned about pollinators now too, and they're part of the chain. It works the same way. Without these little critters, the bacillus and the bugs, we wouldn't have the food we eat to pollinate.
Yeah, it's really important.
So tell us how you got into this. I mean, nobody really had been doing this before. Apparently 1,000 years ago, maybe some of the natives were, but you basically started doing this on your parents' farm as a kid. How did you get into this?
Yeah, I graduated college 35 years ago. And I
Me neither.
I bought my first house, just a little house, and it was in St. Paul's, kind of new construction. I grew up on a farm, so I had lots of gardening experience. I started gardening with my grandma, believe it or not, when I was 2, 3 years old,
I believe it.
because she was our caretaker. My mom was a nurse, so she would work, and my grandma lived on the same farm as I grew up on, but she lived in grandma's house, a little tinier,
Mhm.
small house. So she would do a lot of our babysitting when I was very young. And so she would drag me to the garden, and she would go to the garden and teach me how to garden, essentially just by osmosis, around her.
So I set up a straw bale garden at my old house. Well, with a new guy, Joe, who bought our house. He's awesome. And his little kids, who are 10 and 5, loved playing in the worms. At the bottom of my old straw bales were all these worms and bugs, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
had such a great time. It was infectious for me. It was exciting
Yeah,
to
just
watch
to
them play with
see
it.
how they, realize. And it's so funny because straw bale gardening gives you such an insight into entomology
Yeah.
and, discovery of worms and microbiology, all the microbes that are in there. You can talk a lot about nutrients and what
Mhm.
nutrient molecules. They can't see them, of course, for kids, but,
Mhm.
and then there's nothing better with little kids than letting them plant something from a seed and then harvest the
Mhm.
green beans or the tomatoes or whatever from the garden.
Mhm.
It really gives them, it like opens their eyes to where food comes from.
Yeah.
It's important for them to realize sometimes if a kid's not exposed to that, they can become teenagers and still not realize where a cucumber comes.
Yeah.
They have no idea.
So during my quest to run the 50 state marathons, I have, particularly this summer, we've driven all across the country. Like we went down to West Virginia and we drove over to Aspen, Colorado, and we're in Minnesota. I'm surrounded by cornfields. I grew up in Farmington, the heart of the southeastern Minnesota farming belt. And when you drive across the United States through thousands of miles of cornfields, it really hits home
Yeah.
that the United States, this is where all of your food is coming from. And we go up to Fargo and Grand Forks, North Dakota, where all the sugar beet farmers are and soybean farmers in northern Minnesota. And it's amazing, people. These are the people behind the scenes that I consider kind of part of the infrastructure of the world that you may not know are here, but they are developing new methods of agriculture, developing new strains of wheat and straw. Like you mentioned, the Minnesota Rothsay wheat is a new strain of wheat that has a stronger stalk. And so the wheat on top is a little more, easier to harvest that.
Yeah.
And then the straws that come from that make better bales. And so there are thousands of scientific researchers all over the world doing things to help make food, well, obviously more nutritious, but then more disease resistant, easier to harvest, used for multiple things that you may not think about in your everyday life. But then when you're at the grocery store in the vegetable aisle, think about that. Like, yeah, Norman Borlaug is my hero. He's the food science researcher from the University of Minnesota who developed a short strain wheat that saved billions of people in Mexico and India from starvation and started the Green Revolution.
Yeah, there's several statues on the University of Minnesota campus of him. There's a big argument, between the University of Iowa and Minnesota because he was born in Iowa.
He's from Cresco.
But then he came to Minnesota for his studies and a lot of his research work.
Okay. So on my bucket list of travels is Des Moines, Iowa, because they have the World Food Hall of Nobel laureates.
They do.
And he's in there. But this museum, it's only open from like 1 to 1:45 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or you can make an appointment with the librarian.
Yeah.
So
I've actually been there. They have a World Food, what is it called? I don't know the official name, but it's the World Food Program once a year. And it was just not long ago, a couple of weeks ago is when this year's was. I didn't go this year, but I've gone several times in the past. And they have speakers from all over the country, all over the world. And it's kind of agriculture meets nutrition scientists and social scientists who, social workers who work with people who are in a situation where there's food insecurity.
Yeah.
So lots of food banks come there and people like that represent those. And then they give out the Norman Borlaug Award.
Oh, nice.
And you get $500,000 if you win. And so they have given this out to people throughout history. And then
Mm.
once they give you the award, then you become part of the museum. So it's very interesting.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, these scientists behind the scenes who do these things, I think, well, medical doctors are great. They get a lot of attention for directly saving people. But these researchers behind the scenes, even you and Norman Borlaug doing these things, he's probably saved more people's lives than anyone else in the world.
Well, they save several billion. So I don't know how they put a number on that, but
Yes.
he, developing strains of wheat that were disease resistant and had all their other kinds of desirable characteristics. And he did it all. There was no genetic
Mhm.
work, but
They didn't cross.
They
They
couldn't
didn't do
gene
level.
splice back then, but they could crossbreed, so
Yeah.
they did hybridization,
Traditional.
traditional hybridization
Mendelian genetics.
results. Exactly. So, and that's how he did all of his genetic development. So actually a neighbor of mine who used to live across the cul-de-sac from me was a researcher at the University of Washington, and he knew Norman Borlaug back in the day. He's
Was that Washington in Missouri or Seattle?
in Seattle.
In
Yeah.
Seattle. Okay.
Yeah, University of Washington. And then, and he did some associate professor work here at the University of Minnesota, and that's how he got to know Norman Borlaug. It's funny having
Wow.
conversations with him because,
Okay.
his specialty was alfalfa,
Mm-hmm.
my neighbor,
Yeah.
Gordon. But obviously they worked in the same building, so it's interesting.
Yeah, this is what Borlaug Hall
Yeah.
now at the University of Minnesota. Yeah, my degree's in genetics and cell biology. Oh,
Yeah.
little bit of nerdy. Okay, so we digress a little bit from, but your straw bale gardening is bringing gardening to the masses more. I mean, the people can do it in there. Oh, but we were talking about how you got started with this with
Yeah.
your grandma. I'm totally off track.
Yeah.
So your grandma was taking you out when you were two.
Just traditional gardening methods, learning all the basics of what to plant when and how far apart and all that kind of thing. And then, of course, I graduate, go to college. I graduate, I get a degree in horticulture. And my assumption was that I would come back to the farm, and that didn't work out because I met a girl.
Of course.
And I ended up starting a completely different business, not even related to horticulture.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for a few years, and I ended up buying a house in St. Paul. It had no soil really, to speak of, about an inch of topsoil. And right after I had graduated college, and I just bought this house, and I wanted to have a garden, but my problem was I didn't have money to build raised beds, which is what a normal, logical horticulturalist would have done at this point when you don't have good soil. But I did remember when I was a kid, we had dairy cows growing up, cattle. So we had lots of straw and lots of hay bales. And when we'd have a broken string, that bale would get tossed against the barn.
Yeah.
And then it would end up staying there forever. And a year would go by, and the biggest, healthiest plants would grow out of these decomposing bales.
Okay.
So then when I couldn't build raised beds, I thought, why couldn't I just use old bales
Mm-hmm.
and accelerate the decomposition a little bit and then plant directly into the bales? So I tried to do some research, but I couldn't find any, there was no Google back then. So
Right.
to the library and went to the card catalog.
What do we use? NIRAC?
Yeah,
for
I tried to
searches?
look up any information I could find, and there really wasn't anything. There was a little bit of work that had been done. The Aztecs, as you mentioned earlier, I think 3,000 years ago, made these things called chinempas, which were floating piles of reeds
Okay.
that they would pull out of the swamp and make a big pile of reeds. And then they would, on top of the reeds, they would plant their vegetable where it would decompose on top of the pile of reeds. So it was like a raft garden that they were doing back then.
So then it would never flood either. It would
Right, it
rise
would
and
rise up
fall
with the water,
with the
exactly.
river.
And so there was some research out there on that, or not really research, but just historical
Yeah.
recitations of what they had done. But I couldn't find anything. So I called a bunch of professors, and none of them really thought this was a very good idea. But they said, let us know what you find out, whatever. So I started doing it. And immediately when I first wanted to do it, I didn't want to do it at the house, at the place I had just bought, mainly because all my neighbors knew I had a degree in horticulture, and I didn't want to see me face plant with this method. So I did it at the farm where I grew up. My dad got a bunch of bales, and we set up some experimental gardens the first year. And it was just instantly successful. Within 2 months of when we planted, we both looked at each other like, whoa, what is going on here? This is crazy how well this works.
And your dad was being a scientist and set up different lines to compare all the different baling methods and fertilization with the soil method. I love that.
Yeah, we compared different methods of treating the bales to try to get them to accelerate decomposition, and then one just control group in the soil. And at the farm where I grew up, we have beautiful soil.
Oh, yeah.
It's 3.5 feet of sandy loam. It's some of the most productive soil on planet Earth is in Nobles County, Minnesota. So it was a good comparison, and instantly we saw the difference between this method, especially early in the season. There's some advantages maybe we'll talk about in a little bit, but one of them is that as the bales start their decomposition process inside, they get warm because of that biological activity of the microbes.
Yeah.
The bales tend to warm up. And so it's warmer than your surrounding soil. So if you're planting crops that like warm roots, like that warmth, you get accelerated growth early in the spring. So you get faster root production, faster vine production, and that leads to earlier yields, typically in your garden, better yields, and for a longer period of time. So we didn't realize any of this when I first started. It was just a way to have tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers when I didn't have soil to plant it.
It's funny you mentioned the temperature. So when my mom set up her first straw bale garden, it was either 2013 or 2014 when I went out and saw it. And she brought the meat thermometer out there and stuck it in the bale to show me the inside of the bale was at 104 Fahrenheit. And it was
on a day when it's probably 65 degrees or 60 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah. I found some pictures of her first straw bale garden from 2013.
That's a common picture. People will take a picture of their thermometer in their bale.
And I did that.
And then they put it on Facebook. Yeah. It happens a lot. Yeah. It's interesting that when you explain, because again, as we mentioned earlier, microbes are really small. You can't see them. So you don't really understand necessarily what's happening. But in all of my lectures I give, I try to do a section where I explain why the bales get warm, why they heat up, and try to break that down. It would be a much longer conversation if you're talking to a microbiologist, but I just try to quickly explain how, why the microbes cause that heat inside the bales.
Let's see, do you have a graphic here in your
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything graphically, because it's kind of a deep conversation, so we didn't get a whole lot into it in the book.
Oh, but there is a picture of your grandma in here.
Yeah, Grandma Josephine. Yeah, I dedicated my first book to her.
Yeah.
So, so I try to explain some of the science about how it works, but then also about why that is advantageous for growing vegetables. So, there's lots of advantages that if you first look at, I've talked to lots of groups over my years. I think 3,500 presentations I've given about straw bale gardening since I started doing it.
And this is the best one so far, right?
That's right. Yeah.
This is your best one today.
And very often I'll get people that are a little skeptical, especially if they're like a master gardener. They're like, well, what's wrong with the soil? Soil works great. Why would you do this? But there are many advantages that people don't see until they start doing it, until they investigate a little bit. And usually 15 minutes or so with a master gardener, and I can convince them to at least try it.
Okay.
And then they'll talk themselves into doing it after that. So I've had many of them that started with 1 or 2 bales, and now I run into them and they're like, I met you 5 years ago and I tried 1 or 2 bales and now I do 25 bales. My whole garden is in
I'm up to 28 bales.
Is in bales, yeah. But some of the advantages, number one is you don't have any weeds. That's a really big one. If you take care of the space between your rows of bales, which is simple to do, wood chips or whatever, newspaper, cardboard, whatever.
This year I made a mistake and I used some kind of landscape fabric that just shredded under my feet. I had to rip it out yesterday.
Yeah. If you buy the good ground cloth, it's called, you got to buy it. It's more expensive, but it lasts a lot longer. It's through like a greenhouse supply place. A lot of times you can buy it, but the landscape fabric that they sell to homeowners at, the big box, Lowe's or Home Depot, don't use that. It doesn't work very good.
Go to the farm store and live it up. Farm stores have everything from like ear tags to prom dresses.
Well, it depends on the farm store where you're at. Yeah. But so anyway, no weeds. That's a really big one. It's probably the number one reason people gravitate towards straw bale gardening is, I can go all summer and not have to pull weeds.
Right.
So that's a really big one.
No weeds.
Bales will absorb and hold moisture really well. So you don't have to water as often. Number one mistake people make, however, as new straw bale gardeners, is they tend to water all the time because that's what they're used to doing in their traditional garden. So they water a lot and they don't realize how that bale holds on to moisture.
Yeah, that was definitely my problem this year. I set it up and I got an irrigation system and I watered it too much. And so the water was washing away the new soil that was being created. And I didn't realize how much of a problem that would be thinking that, oh, the straw wicks away all the water. What it does, but it's washing away the good stuff you want. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the newly forming soil particles inside the bale get essentially leached out through the bottom of the bale, and it hollows out the inside of the bale, and they'll kind of collapse or fold over. So they hold moisture really well. You don't have weeds. You don't have to bend over as far. And for people who are young and fit, that's not a problem. But as you get older, even 30 years into this gardening process, it becomes more advantageous every year. Even older people. I mean, I've had people in their 90s who do straw bale gardening. I hear from them, their kids especially will contact me. Oh, you made such an impact. My mother was still gardening at 94 or whatever. Yeah. So it's really interesting to hear that. So they can just put a chair next to the bale and do their planting and harvesting. And the disease issues where if your soil gets infected with septoria or verticillium or any of the fungal diseases, it can harbor in the soil from year to year. So if you use that same soil the next year to grow similar or same crops, you're going to get that infection very quickly into your plants. So using bales means you're creating new soil, virgin soil inside the bales, and you sort of cut that cycle off. So if you keep the bales above the soil and don't ever contaminate your plants with your existing soil, you can eliminate a lot of that disease problems. So that's another big one. It's relatively inexpensive to do straw bale gardening. $5 probably average for a bale. And if you can get 2 years out of a bale, and then you get to use the compost that remains from that. So that's another year you can usually utilize it. And you can use it I use a lot of my old compost is in all my pots for patio pots and window boxes and anything.
So as the straw bale decomposes, then at the end, you're left with some really nice black dirt, and that's the dirt you're putting in your pots?
Yeah.
Nice.
It doesn't last as long as, if you buy the container mix at the store for $13 for a bag.
Right.
That stuff is nice because it has a lot of acidity. It has a lot of peat moss in it. So it'll tend to decompose more slowly. And that maintains its structure. So the drainage is good. The stuff we get left over from straw is going to decompose in that pot pretty quickly. So you usually only get it to use it for a year. It holds moisture really well in that pot. But if you try to use it a second year in a pot or a container, you won't get drainage.
So I put it in the bottom of my pots this year thinking, oh, yeah, that looks pretty good. And, oh, yeah, maybe it'll drain a little better. And thank you for validating that.
Yeah. So so you get to use what's left over after the whole process to condition your other soil in your garden, make your garden even better, your traditional garden even better.
So on the picture, how many bales are in this picture? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bales in here?
Yep.
5 bales. And then on either side of the bale, he's got a T-post. And then across, there's a board. And then in the middle, there's wire, electrical fencing wire, so that the plants can grow up and have a little bit of support. And you can do 2 wires so the plants go between. And then all the roots grow down through the bale. And then all your squashes and stuff go all crazy and they start growing all over the ground next to it. It's pretty.
Yeah, some of the smaller squash like acorns and even butternuts, I'll put up on the trellis and let them hang up on the trellis. But pumpkins, you can't do that because pumpkins get so big.
So butternut squash will hang down without breaking?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and you had your eggplants going through your garden here.
But yeah, but if you try to put pumpkins up there, actually, the truth is that I've never tried it just because it's not logical.
Right.
Pumpkins get so big, I didn't grow pumpkins this year, but usually, you get a 30, 40 pound pumpkin. That would be a lot of weight up on that trellis. So I don't usually do that, but the acorns and butternuts and Hubbards and most of the other squash I grow, just hang off of the trellis without any problem at all.
Great. What you've created here, you did this on your own. You're doing this on the side in your little suburban home, and you end up publishing a book, and it goes global.
Well,
just instantaneous. Tell us about that.
Instantaneous.
Instantaneous.
So I did this for 16 years before anybody really cared.
Yeah, just doing it in your backyard, doing your thing.
Yeah, and my dad had a garden at the farm, and people would stop by the farm all the time and ask questions. So I'd written up a little flyer about how to do straw bale gardening because he was sick of telling people how to do it. So he would hand them a flyer. So that was kind of like the precursor, about 3 pages long, just a little step-by-step guide. And that was the first written information that existed about straw bale gardening. And then as I learned more doing it, I had more information to be able to give. And eventually I I was approached by, actually my dad met this guy at a resort, and the guy was a reporter from KARE 11, the NBC affiliate in
Okay.
Minneapolis.
Yep.
And they're sitting at the bar, whatever, talking at this resort. And my dad says, "Oh yeah, you're a gardener. Oh, my son's a gardener and he grows in bales." And this reporter was real curious. His name's Jeff Olson. He's actually still around.
Yeah. Okay.
And so he said, "Well, I'd like to talk to him about it." So he called me and we talked. And he said, "Can I come over and film a segment for, I do this thing called the KARE 11 Extra, which is on Thursday night at the end of the news for like 5 minutes or whatever." And so he came and filmed it and put it on KARE 11, and it just went crazy. I mean, people, it just exploded. The newsroom actually called me the next day and said, "You got to have a website or something because everybody's calling here asking for information and we don't know what to tell them." So I said, "Well, tell them to go to strawbalegarden.com." And there was no such thing. So
they couldn't make it.
Literally that night on GoDaddy, I built a one-page website.
Nice.
That just told people the basics of how to do it, whatever. And so some young gal contacted me and said, "You need to put a page on this brand new website out there." And I said, "Well, what's that?" She said, "Well, it's called the Facebook." You probably never heard of it, but I said, "No, I've never heard of it. But if you think I should do that, then if you'll help me, we can do it." So we put a page on the Facebook and I started offering this little booklet. My 3-page flyer that I'd created turned into a 60-page. All it was literally was 8.5 by 11 paper. Folded in half and pulled down the middle. That was my book that I was sending out. And so people that watched the KARE 11 thing,
publisher.
Exactly, and wanted more information would contact me and say, "Okay, can you send me this?" So I started, just basically to cover the cost at Kinko's of making copies, $2 or whatever, I would send you a copy of this. And so then I had taken pictures over the years. So we put some pictures in it. And then my wife is a journalism major. So she's like, "Well, you can't just send people this. You have spelling errors in here, honey. I need to fix this." So we made it into an actual booklet.
Okay.
And had them printed at a print shop, and they put a perfect bind on it. So that was like the first iteration of any straw bale gardening manual for how to do it. And I put it on this Facebook page, and it started going, like, people all over the world would order this little booklet. And places where you don't even dream of gardening, Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Egypt and Israel, they're ordering this booklet. And then they would put pictures on our Facebook page of their gardens that they had grown in the middle of the desert without soil, just in bales of decomposing bales.
Just water.
Yes.
Just add water.
Exactly. And so,
and fertilize.
And then after doing that I think I just sold that self-published booklet for like 2 or 3 years, thousands and thousands of copies through Facebook.
Great.
And then the publishers came, and I had Story Publishing came, and Cool Spring Press, which is local. They're the ones who did, if you've ever heard of square foot gardening.
Yes. People had square foot gardening. They had Victory Gardens.
Yeah. Mel Bartholomew.
Yep.
He and I became good friends.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We both had the same publisher. But anyway.
My mom had that book.
Yeah.
I got it
He's
now.
He's a really nice guy. Actually, right before he passed away, we had talked about doing a co-venture, a square foot straw bale garden, which would have been cool. But he ended up passing. He had cancer and passed away several years ago, probably 10 years ago. Anyway, so the publishers came and they said, "You need to write a real book." And I said, "Well, I already wrote a real book." And they're like, No. We're going to take professional pictures, and then we're going to keep most of the money.
Oh, yeah. So, sounds like a great deal.
So my first book actually came out in 2013. The publishing company did a great job. They got lots of publicity. Had a reporter here in the winter, actually, from the New York Times, who spent a day and a half interviewing me about this method of gardening. Then he did a bunch of research on his own and contacted a bunch of people who were already straw bale gardeners who had purchased my information, whatever, to see what they had accomplished. And, it was the middle of winter, so there wasn't a lot of garden to look at, but I showed him lots of pictures and stuff. And then an article came out in the New York Times 6 days after my book published at the end of March in 2013 that just lit it on fire.
Wow.
Because the New York Times, of course, is read all over the world. So then all these international publishers contacted my publisher and said, "Hey, we want to publish that book in German or French or Italian or whatever."
You won some French award?
Yeah, a French award for the best book of horticulture. I don't remember what it's called anymore.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was named after some famous French writer. But anyway, and then we did a garden in France in 2013 that started in April March, I guess, and went through the fall. So went through September, October, but it was actually done by a Parisian landscape architect.
Oh, fancy.
Who designed it. I had very little to do with it other than advice and, providing, some direction for them.
Yeah.
But they built this entire garden out of straw bales, and it was a motif of sort of hillside garden. Looked like a Monet painting when you walked in. It was really kind of cool. There's some old pictures on our Facebook page on our website, but at the International Garden Festival, I believe it's called, in Chermont in France. It's a castle in France, and they have 28 little gardens. And one of them that year was the straw bale garden that these guys had created. But it had all kinds of different vegetables and stuff growing in. And that gave us lots of publicity for this method of gardening all around the world. Like people from China and Russia fly their private jets in and do this garden tour. That's the kind of garden that it is.
Wow.
And it's a contest. So, it's people vote on which garden they like best. And of course, the straw bale garden won.
Did it?
Yep. And so, it was a great introduction, sort of like a world introduction of this method of gardening to people everywhere. And the colder the climate, so people like in China and Russia really appreciated it. And much of Northern Europe, because we have the same climate here in Minnesota. So they could see the advantages of the warmth that the bales create as they decompose, and a lot of those advantages they could take advantage of just like we did here in the Northfield climate.
Yeah. So you can plant a little earlier and the roots will go down and they'll thrive.
Yeah. Because of
the
that
season. So
the warmth. Yeah. So that was like the big introduction. And then we translated into French and German, and I think 20 some translations that first year, which is unheard of especially for a gardening book. And they translated into, of all languages, into Dutch, which was really cool because horticulture ideas usually come from the Netherlands to the United States. They don't go the other direction.
Yep.
So that was really amazing. I didn't sell a ton of copies, as I recall, but having it translated into Dutch was meaningful for me, just because from a horticulture standpoint, that pretty impressive that the Dutch took advice from me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. And at one talk, I saw you mentioned a Dutch woman who had put the straw bale in her backyard because it would flood a lot and then reseed.
Yeah. It's one of the big things about the straw bales is if you get a heavy rain, in her case, it's a creek that rose every spring. She didn't realize it. She bought this property next to a creek, planted her beautiful vegetable garden. And a week later, the water comes up 8 inches out of the creek and it just floods everything. If you know anything about Holland in the Netherlands, it's super flat. So you pour out a cup of water, it goes a mile every direction. And so she ended up she discovered after that first year, she discovered the straw bale gardens method. She thought, why can't I plant on top of a bale? Then if the water comes up 8 inches, who cares? Because it won't flood my plants. They're on top of the bale. Yeah. So she mastered the technique of straw bale gardening. And then she now goes all around the Netherlands teaching other people in the same situation because, she's not the only one that ever had that problem in the Netherlands. So unless you build dikes and pumps and everything, it's hard to keep that flood water out of your garden.
Yeah.
So
my husband says you can't control water. You can just manage it.
Yeah, exactly.
He's with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay,
so they work on the Mississippi.
Yeah, that's for sure. So she was Marjan Kuchans is her name. So she was a successful person in the Netherlands who took advantage of that.
To really embrace it.
Straw bale garden. Yeah, really embraced it and has taught lots of people how to do it, gave classes on it all over and I think in Germany she did some work as well. So so other people, have taken the original concept of straw bale gardening and spread it around their country. We had a big project in Cambodia, in the Philippines. There's 2 agriculture technical colleges that teach straw bale gardening now to their students who will become instructors.
In Asia?
In the Philippines, just in the Davao region of the Philippines.
Okay. Oh, and I know at one of the talks too, you said you had to make a YouTube video to explain how to make a bale without using language.
Yeah,
so they could make their own bales.
Well, what's interesting is these farmers in the middle of outskirts of Cambodia. So they're 4 hours from civilization.
Yeah.
For many of them, I was the first white person they'd ever seen in their life.
Oh,
so
I believe it.
Very unusual to be around these people, but many of them can't read and write, but they all have cell phones, believe it or not. They all have cell phones and they love watching videos.
Yep.
So even if they can't understand the language, because a lot of them don't speak English, of course, but when I went there to visit them, I'm like, well, we need to make some bales. And they're like, what do you mean make bales? Because they don't
Yeah.
turn they have lots of rice straw,
Yeah.
but they don't make bales. They make piles of straw that they, try to get their cows to eat. But it's hard to explain to them that there's not a lot of nutrient value in the straw. So,
and otherwise they would burn it too, right?
Yeah,
So now they
usually
don't
they
have to
just
burn
burn
it.
it.
They
Yeah.
can actually use it.
right. Yeah. Their government didn't appreciate that they would light half of the country on fire for a week and all the smoke blows into Phnom Penh and all around the areas where there's lots of population.
Your gardening method is solving pollution too.
I'm not going to take credit for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they didn't know how to make bales. What we discovered is there was one mechanical baling machine, one baler in the whole country of Cambodia. But I sent them a link to a YouTube video that showed them how to make a little wooden baler, kind of like over center lever. And you could fill this, vertical stand, sort of the size of a bale, fill it with straw, and then it would compress it down and the strings would wrap around.
Okay.
So very rudimentary and very slow to make bales, but they're very smart people. They can't, it's amazing. They can't necessarily read and write, but they're very intelligent people.
Oh, yeah.
And you show them how to do something and they got it, or they show you, they've engineered some method to solve a problem that you never even thought of. With all your degrees and everything, you never thought of it, and they think of it.
Fancy.
So,
I mean, people are ingenious, especially if they don't have to use electricity or anything. You can make do with a lot.
Right. So, I did a TED talk about those two projects, the Cambodia project and the Philippines project, where I started getting more in depth on why we did this and how the projects evolved and what. But those are two of many projects over the years, but probably the two I use as an example. As I was mentioning earlier, I talked to Nan, who runs the Akandun Cambodia, which is the nonprofit organization that I went and worked with when we set up our original gardens, on the phone like a week and a half ago, just to catch up sesh on what he's been up to and whatnot. And he estimates over 8,000 farmers now he's taught this method of how to do this.
Okay. That's amazing. So are they using it mainly for personal use to feed their own families, or are they actually selling vegetables?
Yeah. Well, here's the problem in Cambodia is they're really good at growing rice and they have good weather during the rice growing season, reasonable amounts of rain. As soon as they harvest the rice, the monsoons come.
Okay.
And there's 5 feet of water that covers the entire country.
Wow.
And so they can't grow they all live in little huts up on stilts and they get around in little boats, little skiffs. So they can't really plant anything in the ground because it rains every day, 5 or 6 inches.
Yeah.
So how in the world can they grow fresh vegetables? They're 4 hours by motorbike to get to a city where they could get, fresh vegetables. And it's 100 degrees out. So by the time they got back, it's humid, 100 degrees.
It's everything's.
Yeah. And now remember, they're not in a motorbike anymore. Now they're in a boat. So it takes them 2 days to get the same distance they could go on a motorbike in 4 hours. So it's just impossible for them to have a frequent supply of fresh vegetable. Not a big deal certainly for somebody like me who has lots of stored nutrients in your body. But for little kids who are 0 to 2, who have no stored fat in their body, to be without niacin, vitamin C, and iron, and protein, and a lot of the nutrients, and all they have to eat is rice, stored rice, they get distended bellies. And the United Nations says this part of the world, rural parts of Cambodia, are where some of the worst malnutrition exists on planet Earth.
So they're eating, but they're just not getting the nutrients with it.
Yeah, because they have no fresh vegetables at all. The fresh water is also a big issue there. So how in the world do you solve this problem, right? They've been for centuries, their forefathers have lived in this area and they all have done the same thing. Yeah. So actually the Koreans do a lot of work with the Cambodians. Okay. They build water treatment plants and things like that in Cambodia. And the Korean Trade Development Association and I worked together to come up with this idea where we would build a mound, sort of a plateau we'd dig soil out of the ground and make a hole in the ground and then a plateau right next to the hole. And these are big holes. These are 15 feet deep, 30 feet by 30 feet.
Okay. And so you take the dirt out of that and you make
pile it up right next to it to make a pile.
Little mesa plateau next to it. Okay.
Tall enough that it was above the flood line. So no flood water would get above that.
Okay.
And then we would take the rice straw, which is plentiful. Yep. Usually they burn it, but now they make it into bales and we put the rice straw on top of the plateau. Yeah. And during the monsoon season, even though it rained, 4 inches a day, by afternoon, it was beautiful and sunny.
Oh, really?
The problem is soil holds on to water so much
Yeah.
that it would never drain.
Yep.
So you get root rot. Anything you plant in soil would get root rot. But when you plant it in the bale very quickly, gravity pulls water, excess water out, and oxygen comes into the root zone.
Yeah.
So you can maintain plants without root rot in these bales up on top of this plateau.
Did you put extra drainage in those plateaus?
Nope.
Okay.
Just gravity would carry water off the edges, and then the bales, were 20 inches tall.
Yep.
So water would run out of the bales and out of the plateau. And so they started growing lettuces, and one of their favorite crops is bitter gourd.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's weird. It looks like a giant cucumber, but
Okay.
they all love it over there. And it's got a lot of vitamin C in it. And they grew squash, and they grew peas and beans and lentils and a lot of things like that. All vegetables that would fill these nutrient gaps during this 5 months where it was monsoons for 3 months, and then it was 2 months of drought.
Okay. I was going to ask, what are the weather seasons there?
So it goes too much moisture. There's water everywhere. And then all of a sudden the water all goes away, and now it's 105 degrees every day in the shade, and there's no rain at all.
Okay.
So they don't have pumps and electricity and water like our modern civilization. But they did now have a great big pit that we had dug in the ground, and that pit would even get fed groundwater from below.
Okay.
So it's not potable water. You can't drink it.
You could boil it, I suppose.
I don't even know if I would do that. It's pretty nasty looking, but they could dunk their pail in it and water their garden. It would have no problem for keeping the garden watered.
Okay.
So up on top of this plateau for that 5 months, they were growing vegetables to feed their family and other people nearby.
You could use the Archimedes screw and get the water to go uphill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we had early success doing this. We had people from Vietnam and Laos and Korea and all over Cambodia that came, other academics to kind of learn this method while I was there. And then we installed some demonstration gardens, I guess you'd call it, but mainly at middle schools, which is a lot of kids don't go to high school there. But by middle school, they can read and write, so they could take notes and they could go home and teach their family this method.
Okay.
And for people that didn't have the pit dug yet, we used the old Aztec method.
Okay, on the raft.
Where we would build a bamboo raft. Actually, we didn't build it. They built the raft because they're really good at building rafts.
Yep.
If you live in a society where 3 months a year, everything's 5 feet underwater, you know how to build rafts. So they would build a raft on the ground, just on the dry ground, a really buoyant, thick bamboo raft, and then put the bales and plant the vegetables on top of these rafts so that when the floodwaters did come, the raft would stay above the water line and allow drainage out of the bales.
Okay. And you mentioned they use plastic bottles too for that.
Yeah. Well, they don't have wire like we have, or if they do, it's really expensive for them. So they would use 2-liter bottles, like plastic bottles, and they had this little slitter that would slit a ribbon. So they would start the bottle, they cut the top off and start this ribbon, and then they would pull on the ribbon and the bottle would spin on this little knife, and they would make a long ribbon of plastic out of this spinning 2-liter bottle. Then they would put 2 or 3 of those together and twist them, and it's just as strong as wire.
Yeah. So my friend Tan grew up in Vietnam, and he had to work for his uncle in their little store. And he said that they had to save absolutely everything. So when something came into the store, the packaging, the string, the plastic, they would take everything off and have to untangle it and put it in because they were going to use it, or their customer needed it. And he said it was... Yeah. It's just any resource you had to take advantage. And then his family ended up being part of the boat people leaving Vietnam and coming to Minnesota. But this use for plastic bottles and resources struck home for me because we were in Egypt and India and some other places, and the plastic litter is everywhere.
Yeah.
I think they could use one of the garbage burning electric plants like we have, like the King plant, Yeah,
it is.
But I thought that was great, using this resourcefulness of plastic bottles.
Yeah, and they use that to make the strings on their bales and to make the wires in their trellises. And they use a lot of bamboo for stuff. If you need to make anything structural, they run in the woods and cut down bamboo. They make it out of bamboo. They don't have fence posts. They don't have a farm store to go and buy stuff. They just go to the woods and get bamboo.
There's some bamboo.
So, it's pretty amazing how resourceful they are.
Yeah.
And how much they can get accomplished with rudimentary tools and, and without a lot of modern things that we just take
For granted.
for granted. Exactly.
Yes.
So yeah, that project was really great. The Philippines was a little different. In Cambodia, about 70% of the population still lives on small farms,
Okay.
2.5 acres.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be 4 or 5 generations still living on that. There's no social security.
Mm-hmm.
There's no retirement homes. You live with your family.
Yeah.
And then you get buried on the farm, essentially is how it works. And their government provides them nitrogen because they use that fertilizer to grow rice, and to get more yield, they use additional nitrogen. So they had all they needed there for resources, which is nitrogen and water. It was really all you need to get the straw bale gardening method to work. So I always tell people, if you have a hunger pangs in your stomach, it's amazing how quickly you learn a method where you can solve that problem.
Yeah.
And not even necessarily for you, but if your kids are, you will do anything to try to solve that problem.
Yes.
And so the method was adapted very quickly because of that. They could see that this was solving a problem. Now, you'd think you could just, mail a brochure to the whole country and all learn how to do it. Doesn't work that way.
No.
They won't do it. I mean, imagine digging a hole, 10 or 15 feet deep. This is the biggest hole many of these people had ever seen in their life.
Right.
Because they don't have big equipment over there. So the neighbors would come just to see the hole that we had dug, because it was all amazing to them.
Did you do the hole on each farm, or was it kind of a community area?
Yeah, no, we did it. We did each of the demo gardens. I didn't do any. Well, we did one guy's farm, small farm, but it was sort of like a demo garden as well. And it was all set up through Akandin, through NAR. I can't take credit for setting all that up.
No, right. Okay.
But it was really neat. The one farm who we went to, this old farmer, I think there was 5 of us that day when we went to visit his farm, and he wanted to have us for lunch, which makes you a little nervous in rural parts of Cambodia.
Yeah.
And we arrived for lunch, and he went and killed a couple of chickens, and he went in his corn. He had a little corn patch, and he got an ear corn for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I just felt so bad, because I'm like, this guy has almost nothing, and he's offering it to me for lunch. And I said to the guy I was with, the Cambodian guy, should I give him some money or something? He said, oh, no, don't do that. That would dishonor him. He wants to do this. Yeah. And he said, I know he's poor. He knows he's poor, but he wants to do this. So please don't, if you do that, that would not be good.
Okay.
So just learning about their culture. The other thing that was really strange, at the middle school we were at, setting up this thing, they had a guy come on a tricycle, and he had a cooler on the front, a round cooler, and it had dried ice, or dried CO2 ice.
Oh, dry ice?
Dry ice. And then he had flavored water. Okay. So it would freeze to the edge, and he would scrape it off and make these little snow cones.
Oh, yeah.
For the kids, right? And they would give him nickel or whatever in Cambodian money. And I said to the guys we were with, I said, well, if all the kids want one, I'll buy one for all the kids. Okay. And he said, no. He said, I appreciate it. He said, you're very generous, and I appreciate it. He said, if you offer to do that, these kids will never go back inside the school. So when their recess is over, they'll never go back inside, because they'll line up and they'll all get one, and then they'll get in line again. And he said, the line will never end. And
They're
he said,
smart kids.
They will not leave until he runs out. And he said, if you look at their teeth, dental hygiene is not much of a thing. And he said, none of them need this sugary water thing. They shouldn't be eating it. And we've told this ice cream man not to come, but he comes anyway.
Because he makes a couple
because
bucks. 10
kids have a nickel or whatever, that they'll buy it. And he said, so I appreciate your generosity, but the teachers would be upset. It's not a good idea. So, as a Westerner, you don't think about those kind of things, but it's very strange to be in a place where these little kids would come up and they'd poke me in the belly. Yeah. Because they'd never seen someone that had, that was they'd poke me in the belly. They thought it was so funny, because they over there, nobody's fat. Trust me.
Right.
They have distended bellies, some of them, but that's not from being overweight. It's from not having, nutrients. So
we got our winter insulation.
Yeah, exactly. But it was quite funny to be in that kind of a situation.
Yeah.
But so lots of people in Cambodia are rural, where the Philippines is the opposite. 75% of those people are urban dwellers, but many of them are also very food insecure.
Do they have a lot of tall high rises there?
Yeah, I wouldn't call them high rises. Okay. Because they're
like apartment.
Yeah. I mean, they got a lot of steel structures now and some concrete structures, but I'd say 3 stories is probably most of them. If you get to Manila, there's big skyscrapers and big buildings, but places like Southern Philippines, not so much.
Okay.
And urban gardening there is a big thing. So if you can very strange, different from here. They don't have community
I
gardens.
was going to ask, is it a
Yeah,
community?
there's no such thing as community gardens. And I tried to inquire into why. And essentially the answer is because people would just take whatever you grow.
Oh,
They they don't think of it as, well, if it's there and nobody's there, then I can just take it.
I'll just take it.
They don't
Okay.
have an appreciation like we do of, oh, that somebody put the work into growing this and this is theirs. I can't
Mhm.
just take it.
Okay.
Over there, that would be nothing. She said it would just disappear.
Oh,
Whatever you grew would disappear.
okay. So it would get used though. Huh?
Yeah, it would get used, but you wouldn't get any.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to have the garden. If it's right by your house or right by where you park or by your
Mhm.
building or whatever, then people would leave it alone. So
Your
that's what we
territory.
discovered. Yeah.
Mhm.
People could do 2 or 3 bales
Mhm.
right by their property and they would have success.
So would they do it on the roof of any of those buildings?
Yeah, roofs
or
of
their
buildings.
balconies?
Basically anywhere where they're sunning. Where
Okay.
they could find a sunny spot.
Uh-huh.
Could be edge of a parking lot, or they don't have they do have parks with lawns and stuff, but they don't have around their houses and around their buildings. There's not a lot of landscaping. So they
Mhm.
just put bales wherever,
Oh, okay.
it's fine. So very, very strange.
So they're able to use it in really a lot of concrete urban environments.
Urban environment.
Use it here in the U.S. that some of the nursing homes, senior
Yeah.
centers are doing it too in
In the parking lot.
the parking
yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Just out in the back corner, where the parking, nobody ever parks there
Yeah,
since the
yeah.
place was started.
Yeah.
And they'll build a garden out there. And then when people go to work on their garden,
Mhm.
planting or harvesting or watering or whatever,
Mhm.
they wheel or take their walker across the parking lot. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So you accidentally created a global movement here and really impacted millions of lives with.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to quantify how many,
Yeah.
you can go by how many books you've sold. And if you
Yeah.
got one new gardener for every book, that would be
How
a
many
lot of people.
copies are you at?
Close to 1 million copies.
Wow.
which for
that's amazing.
In the gardening sector, that's a
Uh-huh.
lot. Most people, if you sell 10,000 copies, you're doing really well.
Wow.
So yeah, we've sold a lot of books in different languages as well as English.
Mm.
And I've had 5 books now, so that's cumulative. It's not each individual book.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is kind of a hobby for you. If your hobby makes money, it's a business. And if your business doesn't make any money, then it's a hobby.
And it's a hobby.
So is this your full-time job or what are you doing?
No, we have a family tree nursery,
Yeah.
which we've had for 44 years, I guess this year. It'll be our 44th year.
Mhm.
That my dad started when I was very young. And he had it for many years. Now he's passed away. And I used to work for the nursery even
Hmm.
while he was running it. I didn't get paid a lot when he was
Of course
running it.
not.
And he didn't sell as much. No, we've kind of, after he passed away and I took over, we kind of changed the orientation of the business a little bit. So we allow people to shop online now
Okay.
at karstennursery.com.
Ooh, way to go. Oh,
So,
support that? What
Yeah,
is the website?
karstennursery.com. It's
A-
a little unusual.
KAR.
Yeah, KARSTEN
STEN.
nursery.com.
Okay.
We're a wholesaler, so we don't
Mhm.
sell, you can't buy one tree from
Yeah.
us.
Okay.
We sell a lot of stuff for windbreaks for
Mhm.
farmers and ranchers, but we make you buy a bundle of
Yeah.
trees. So you got to buy 25. They're
Mhm.
smaller, they're bare root. That's kind of the business that we're in. So and we have
Okay.
one tree in particular that we developed years ago. We call it Super Tree. It's a hybrid. It's a Salix hybrid, and it grows really fast.
Okay.
So people use it for windbreaks, and we sell a lot.
What is a salix? Is that
It's a
like
type of
pine?
willow. Yeah.
It's a willow tree. Okay.
Yeah. It's a hybrid of a couple of different willow trees. And then it'll grow like 6 or 8 feet the first year.
Wow.
So it's pretty. And then, so
Oh,
you get a windbreak in, 2 or 3 years, you've got a really nice solid 20-foot tall barrier. Yeah.
that's
and,
nice.
And so that tree has been very successful. And that's sort of put Karsten Nursery on the map early on,
Mm.
30 years ago when we developed it. And then we sell 100 and some varieties, species of trees. So some conifers and deciduous trees,
Mhm.
mainly stuff you use in a windbreak, a lot of native habitat redevelopment,
Mhm.
some fruiting trees and shrubs and that
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd like to add some fruit trees to our yard too. Probably not this year.
Yeah. We don't sell grafted apple trees,
Okay.
that kind of stuff. We sell mainly stuff that crab apples that wildlife would like, deer
Oh,
and
mhm.
birds and stuff.
Yeah, I got plenty of those.
Yeah.
When my mom must have heard about you right away in 2013 when you started doing it. She's essentially a master gardener, always at a green thumb. And you've just been unstoppable with this movement, with this project ever since. So what's next for you?
Keep doing what I've been doing. I don't see any, major changes. And, I try to do a few presentations every year within my community locally. And then I also I'm a hired speaker. So I go around the country and I do a lot of home garden shows, usually 5 to 7. I don't want to do too many.
Yeah.
I used to do a whole bunch.
Yeah.
It's a lot of travel. It keeps me busy, but I usually I do anywhere from 3 to 7 a year.
And you mentioned along with your book, you have a website dedicated just for the straw bale. What is that straw bale?
Yeah, strawbaleGardens.com. Then we have Straw Bale Garden Club. And so people can become a member of the club. And
I'm a member.
Yeah. And we do monthly chats, and we make lots of videos. We have lots of videos already on the website. There's over 100 videos that show anything you'd ever want to know about straw bale gardening, things you haven't even thought to ask. That's what I tell people. Where you can watch these videos about how to do it. Some of those videos are on YouTube as well. We put some of them on there, but a lot of the best ones we keep on our club site. And then, you get discounts and that kind of stuff. We made a product a few years ago called Bale Buster, which is the accelerant that you put on the bales to get the bacteria to rapidly decompose.
Oh, yeah. So I don't think we've talked about this too much, but when you set up your straw bales, the first, 10 to 14 days, you need to fertilize the bale and add nutrients to it. Yeah. Nitrogen, urea.
Yeah. Well, you add the food source really for the bacteria. So the bacteria is going to hopefully consume all of this nitrogen. Even if you do it organically, it could be blood meal. Or if you do it traditionally, it could be like a high nitrogen fertilizer. Bale buster is what we call it.
You can pee on it. And then tell your friends that
Don't tell your friends.
You're growing vegetables and pee.
Oh, don't tell your friends. The bacteria consumes all that nitrogen, so it all disappears. Trust me. But I find that very curious how people are perfectly fine if you tell them you're putting cow manure on your garden or horse manure. But if you tell them you peed on your garden, they go crazy. It's very unusual.
Blood meal.
But anyway, in other parts of the world, it's very common. In Asia in particular, it's very common to use human urine, not feces, but urine, as a garden nutrient. Because it has a lot of nitrogen. It has 15% nitrogen.
Easy to apply.
Yeah.
At least for dudes. When we did I did this little hike up to Mount Everest, and we brought these Go Girl tubes. This little device.
Yes, I've heard of it.
Supposed to give you a tube tool.
Not so easy.
Now, I did a couple tests with it before we went home. Like, I don't think this is going to work. Do what? But it's an option.
Yeah.
It's an option. Trying other methods.
Yes.
So it's been fun. Thanks so much for
thanks for having me
out here hosting at your
I feel honored
house.
to be on your podcast about these inspiring people. And how inspiring I am, but
I know you're doing your own thing, and you found out that, wow, it really was impactful. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So thanks, Joel Karsten, for spending your time. Let me come to your house here in Roseville, Minnesota.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been awesome. I hope more people tune in.
Try straw bale gardening. Don't be afraid. Give it a try. Get yourself 4 bales and a bag of Bale Buster, and off you go.
That's all you need.
That's all you need.
Check out his video. It's easy to do, and will change your life. And then you'll become a teacher too. Once you do it,
exactly.
All your neighbors will see.
If you start doing it, you automatically become a teacher, because all your neighbors and friends that come over and see it'll quiz you and ask you all the questions, and then you teach them how to do it, and that's how it spreads.
So I got my mom, who got me, who got my neighbor, my niece, my other neighbor. Now I got 4 other neighbors. So
that's how it happens.
It's multiplying. It's a movement.
Right. It's a multi-level marketing that I didn't even know anything about.
So buy some Bale Buster from Joe also. Keep supporting it.
Thank you, Sally, for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to it and learned a few things. Well, the people that we talked about today, they don't quit, and neither should you. Whether you're running marathons, rebuilding your life, or just searching for that next spark, you are more capable than you think. If this episode hits home, share it, subscribe, leave a review. Let's build this community together of relentless people who refuse to stop moving forward. And if you want to do something even bigger, support the mission. We're raising $1 million for medical research, and your support makes a difference. Check out our website at unstoppablestoriesthatmove.com. I'm Sally Head Dahlquist. Until next time, keep running, keep pushing, and never stop proving to yourself what's possible.